Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing this fine morning? Give me a couple of seconds while we get situated. Just have a couple of announcements before we get into our session for the day. It's great to see you all, by the way. One is that there will be a meeting next Saturday for our preaching and worship teams with myself in the room at the back, and that'll be about 15 minutes after services next Saturday. So all those who were given sermons and messages and in worship will be meeting next Saturday to kind of plan out the new year as a team. During the week, myself and my mum-in-law went to visit Betty Graff. She was quite frail and weak and tired, but whenever she was awake, she was like in a really good spirit. So it was great to see her being her old self as she gets towards the end of what appears to be her line here. So keep her and the family in your prayers through the next few days, because it's a pretty critical time for them all. And last but not least, today I understand that Mr. Boone, Peter Boone, turned 62 today. So, happy birthday to you, and congratulations. I think climbing up and down ladders all day, every day keeps him fit and strong, so that's great to have that special occasion here. Beautiful. Well, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you had a good start to the year. How's it going for you guys? Good? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side? 2019 has come and gone. It had ups and downs, it had its bumps and bruises, it had some challenges here and there and opportunities. And it may or may not have been what you wanted it to be or hoped that it would be last year, but nonetheless, now we're looking back on 2019 and it's complete, it's done. It was a year that was quite eventful. It was a year of change, a year of growth and transition. And we thank God for guiding us through 2019 and helping us to navigate through another challenging year last year. But as we start this year, we have a new vision. Our vision is 2020, and our vision looks like the year is going to be absolutely perfect, being 2020. Another dad joke from me, sorry guys, couldn't help it. But with this new year comes new opportunities and new beginnings, and as Tash mentioned, we have 3 of our young ones currently on a plane flying across the Nullarbor, heading to Melbourne, Victoria for SEP. So what I thought we'd do is, if technology allows us to, is see if we can get that website up for us, please, sir. Oh, great. So this is actually live tracking in 2020 of where Michaela, Catherine, and Ronan are on their flight towards SEP. So I thought we can all share together once we get, yep. They're just hovering over Melbourne, probably doing a few circles before landing, and they probably have got their belts on, the ears are starting to pop as the plane descends, and they're getting quite excited about arriving at the Melbourne airport in about 11 minutes or so, I think it is. So keep them in your prayers for a safe landing and a lovely time at SEP. And while we're on the topic of SEP, I thought it'd be great just to share this with you all, because over the last year, you guys have made it possible for them to attend SEP this year. So thanks for your donations, contributions, and your gifts for making this flight possible for those 3 young ones. Keep them in your prayers for safety, for the weather, the fires that are over east, that the teaching goes well, they have great fellowship, and that the events and logistics all work out according to plan. So something to keep in mind as we think about that today. So, on Tuesday evening, we celebrated New Year's with the family. We normally try to stay up late till midnight, welcome the New Year in, and we did that this past time, and it was actually quite good. Did anyone else here stay up till midnight on Tuesday? A few, good, lovely. So we have a few that like to welcome the New Year in. Others sleep and hope that it gets there the next morning, which is great. But that's all good. So my family and the Jai Stickerers and Rookie and Rosie and the Yorks, Tash and Steve and the boys were there, as well as Andrew Nankerville and a couple other friends. And we met on the South Perth foreshore, just in front of the river, watching the shimmering water go by, a few canoes with little lights in them going by, and just watched the entire progression of the evening as we had a nice barbecue on the foreshore. It was an evening of celebration, food, music, fellowship, and then midnight arrives, and we all had a nice big hugs, Happy New Year type stuff as we normally do. And then Natasha brought around some chocolates to say Happy New Year to everyone, at which point Andrew says, well, there goes my New Year's resolution. He had a plan to eat healthy all year, and first minute of the new year, Tash brings by chocolate, and there goes his plan for his resolution. So it's a time of year where we all have New Year's resolutions. We plan that we want to do some amazing things for the new year. We want to live a healthy life. We want to be more active. And the most prominent resolutions are, number 1, around diet, number 2, around exercise, staying fit and healthy, and number 3, around budget. That's what people normally plan on doing for the new year. According to statistics, there's only an 8% success rate for resolutions in the new year, 8%. So most of the time what happens is you end up getting to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and you begin to binge on those chocolates again, on maybe the donuts that you enjoy. Your gym pass goes under a cupboard somewhere, and then you put your bathroom scale back in the cupboard and never see it till the next new year. That's kind of what happens with human beings around this time of year, except for only 8% of those resolutions. So I guess the question is, why is that, and why do we tend to make all these resolutions every year and then have difficulty keeping them? Now there's probably quite a few reasons for this, but one may be that what we tend to do is we spend so much time and resources and energy on these special times of the year, Christmas and New Year's. We buy presents, we spend tons of money, eat so much food, and then we have a bit of a guilty conscience about what we've done, and so we plan to do better next year. And then January comes around, we sober up, and we forget our resolutions for the year. But the question is, have you ever felt guilty about enjoying yourself? Have you ever felt guilty about celebrating maybe a big birthday, having a big birthday bash, maybe about going to the festival in Mandurah or somewhere else and spending all this money and going out to eat? And you know there's people starving, people who are hungry and who have not much, and we're there celebrating and having a great time. Have you felt guilty about maybe having a Christmas celebration sometime, or maybe even night to be remembered, or maybe even things like the celebrations that we have for anniversaries and that kind of stuff? When you're up to your neck in food and wine and having a good time and listening to music and partying, do you ever wonder how God feels about those moments and what God thinks about the way that we're having fun and just having an awesome time while others are not so well off? One thing about religion is that sometimes religion leads us to have these nagging thoughts that make us wonder what God thinks about our celebrations and us having a good time. And we begin to wonder or think that maybe when we get up early, when we go to the gym, when we perform certain kinds of service works, when we're given donations and offerings, is the only time that God is pleased with us. We begin to think that maybe we should do more and become a bit more pious in our outlook in life, and that maybe that will please God more. And that's what religion tells us oftentimes. When you think about rich people, what comes to mind? People who have tons of money, people who are really affluent and have lavish lifestyles. What comes to mind when you think about those kind of people? Think about it in your heads, and we'll talk about this. I got a chance a while back to meet a really wealthy person. When I lived in Dallas, Texas, I lived in a place that was close to where the NFL football team practiced, and that's one of the big teams in America. And there was a guy there that I met named Deion Sanders. I think I've got a picture of him. That's Deion up there. So Deion meet the church, church meet Deion Sanders. Deion was actually, at that point in time, one of the best football players in the US. And I got to meet him in Dallas, Texas. My dad was in town visiting myself, and we went to dinner or lunch together. And we came out of the restaurant, and we saw this amazing car right in front of the restaurant. Now, my dad had no idea what that was. He just thought it looked like a door wedge. But I know that's a pretty cool Italian Lamborghini. And back in the late 90s, that was worth a fair bit of coin. So Deion Sanders actually, that year that I met him, had just won the Super Bowl with his team, and he was on an amazing high, having a great time. He was a very down-to-earth guy, a very nice guy to meet. He just talked to us like we were just an old friend, but we could tell that he had a pretty lavish lifestyle. He played for 14 seasons, and he made, in the 90s, $33.6 million US dollars over 14 seasons, which today is about $55 million US dollars. Playing football, throwing a ball around is what he did. I'll just share with you a few photos of some of Deion's house, so you can see what it looks like. That's his house in Texas, more like a mansion. Pretty lavish, pretty extravagant. This is a bowling alley inside his house. There's a bowling alley. You've got the TVs up there with the screens, and then you've got like a pool table over there. That's inside his house. Pretty lavish, pretty pimped out. Here is, I understand, his kitchen. Not his living room, that's his kitchen. And I think there's a little island in the middle, or a huge island there. There's probably like taps and stuff over there, and I don't know, dishwashers and stuff. But a pretty large space, bigger than many houses, just his kitchen alone is. Here's a picture of his indoor pool and jacuzzi inside the house, not the outside ones, just the indoor ones, for I guess the cold days or cold nights. And then there's a picture of the house from the outside, from the backyard, what it looked like. Another huge pool, as you can see, and water features and jacuzzi tub in there. So pretty amazing, pretty lavish lifestyle that he lived. So when you think about Deion Sanders and his lifestyle, what comes to mind? A well-known philosopher by the name of Ravi Zacharias and evangelist often asks the question about what were life's greatest crises and what are the biggest challenges that we face as human beings. And one thing that he discovered was that one of the biggest challenges for people is when they discover that you have everything you ever wanted and that still you have nothing. That's the biggest challenge that people face as far as the wealthy folks that we have living around us in this world. Hollywood and in some of those amazing places. And in Ecclesiastes, Solomon mentioned at one point that he gave himself over to every pleasure known to man. He had riches of the world, whatever you could think of, he had it. King Solomon did. And he had access to all the envies that we would have as human beings, but yet he found it to be totally and utterly meaningless. That's from Solomon himself. So Ravi Zacharias at one point got to interview Deion Sanders just after he won the Super Bowl that we saw, and just after he bought that brand new car that I got to see with my dad. And while Deion was actually laying in bed the night after winning the Super Bowl, after getting his brand new Lamborghini in the driveway or the garage, I guess one of his multiple garages probably, he realized that he'd achieved every single goal that he set out to achieve in his life, including winning the Super Bowl, but yet he still felt quite empty. And Deion says at that point he realized that he was missing God. So now he's a Christian, thankfully, and he actually does some preaching from time to time in his church, which is pretty awesome. But our theme today is around God's riches and feasting and celebrating the riches that God gives to us. We looked at some of the verses before, Psalms 147, verses 12 through 20, Ephesians 1, 3 through 14, and then John 1, 1 through 18. And today, with what time we have left, we'll just talk a little bit about the discipline of feasting on what God blesses us with and enjoying the blessings that we have while we have them, not feeling sad for ourselves or feeling pity or feeling like we have to be pious, but actually enjoying what God gives us and blesses us with. Jeremiah 31 reads, and I'll read verses 7 through 14 in Jeremiah 31. It says, "This is what the Lord says, sing with joy for Jacob, shout for the foremost of the nations. Make your praises heard, and say, Lord, save your people, the remnant of Israel. See, I will bring them from the land of the north, and gather them from the ends of the earth. Among them will be the blind and the lame, expectant mothers, and women in labor. A great throng will return." So all those who are challenged in society are those that are all being brought in and being welcomed. Verse 9, "They will come with weeping, they will pray as I bring them back. I will lead them beside streams of water on a level path where they will not stumble, because I am Israel's father, and Ephraim is my firstborn son. Hear the word of the Lord, you nations, proclaim it in distant coastlands. He who scattered Israel will gather them and will watch over his flock like a shepherd." That picture of God caring for his people and taking care of us. Verse 11, "For the Lord will deliver Jacob and redeem them from the hand of those stronger than they. They will come and shout for joy on the heights of Zion. They will rejoice in the bounty of the Lord, the grain, the new wine, and the olive oil, the young of the flocks and the herds. They will be like a well-watered garden, and they will sorrow no more." There will be no more suffering or sorrow. "Then young women will dance and be glad, young men and old as well. I will turn their mourning into gladness. I will give them comfort and joy instead of sorrow." So God's desire is that we have comfort and joy instead of sorrow. "I will satisfy the priests with abundance, and my people will be filled with my bounty, declares the Lord." That's God's vision for his people. There's also the account that we all know in Luke 15 of the prodigal son. And if you focus on just the father's response, what the father did, how he responded when the son came back to him, and how God responds when we come to him, verses 20 through 23 of Luke 15 says, "So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him." Verse 22, "But his father said to the servants, 'Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. And kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast.'" So although religion tells us sometimes that we need to be pious and not have a good time, we have to have solemn faces and serve everyone all the time, give to the poor every single time, and not really have any kind of enjoyment that you might think of, the phraseology in Jeremiah and Luke seem to say that God has other plans for us. Some of the phraseology reads, and I quote, "Sing aloud with gladness for Jacob. Bring the finest robe." That's amazing clothing and garments like you see on the Hollywood shows when they have the award shows and stuff. Bring the finest clothes that you have. "Then shall the young women rejoice in the dance." Another one says, "Embrace him and kiss him. Young men and the old shall be merry." And then the calf we've been fattening for the last few months and years is the one that you bring to feed with the returning prodigal son. And lastly, he says we must celebrate with a feast. So it's actually a picture that we read in these verses that's full of joy and happiness and celebration and lavish, extravagant expressions of love. There's not a single whiff here in those verses of guilt or of restraint in the way that God pours blessings out on us. This is a picture of a party. It's a vision of God's restoration, a vision of God's over-provision for his people, and a vision of God bringing us together for a huge, enormous celebration. It's a vision of singing, a vision of dancing, a vision of enjoying the abundance of blessings that were given by our Father in heaven. And it's a vision of sharing the joy with our triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit. So in those verses, there's actually a couple of themes, and we'll soon get to a couple of questions to discuss as a family here. But the themes that come out are the themes of gratitude, the themes of gathering, and the theme of being grounded in something bigger than who we are. Gratitude in being forgiven, in being included, in being welcomed as you are, in being accepted and loved, and gratitude for what God the Father, Son and Spirit have done and given us with lavish provision. There's a theme of gathering, coming together as we commune and fellowship and worship and celebrate and sing and dance and have a huge party with our God in heaven. Gathering to show that we're all part of the same family. And one of the signs that we see in the Bible is that whenever God has a gathering or a party, everyone is invited, not just a select few, everyone is welcome. We have the theme of being grounded or groundedness, showing that we know, we recognize and appreciate the fact that every good and perfect gift comes from God, from above, not of our own doing. We have the provision from God that has been provided lavishly with huge blessings from our Father in heaven, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So, here's a pop quiz for you guys, which I think you'll all find quite easy. What was the first miracle that you have in the book of John performed by Christ? Turning water into wine. Pretty interesting choice of miracles, isn't it? Wouldn't you think? Turning water into wine, changing the necessary into the unnecessary, the lavish, the extravagant. Turning sustenance, just water, into a party, wine, a good time, having fun. And that's because that's what's at the center of our triune God. Joy, all the time, every time. That's what God is all about. John 15 verse 11 says, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full, complete." That's God's vision for us and what Christ wished in his last moments on earth. So let's take a few moments as a church family just to talk about a few questions today, as we often do in Cafe Church. And we'll ask that you share these topics around your table, one by one. And then we'll have one person from each table, as you guys like, come and share what you've discussed at the table. So the first question for today to think about is just to share with others around your experience celebrating this guilt-free enjoyment. So have you had a time when you've actually had a great celebration based upon what God has given you and not felt guilty about it? Let's share about those discussions around the table, and then I'll come back in about 5-10 minutes and we'll look at what we have discovered as a family here. Okay. Please. Thank you, Richard.
How are you, Pete?
I'm well, thank you.
Do we have sound? We do. What could be more joyful and guilt-free than knowing who God is? To know the Father through Jesus Christ, to know the Holy Spirit through Jesus Christ, to know that there's not a God up here that we have to try and climb and make good our sins, to know that he actually loves us. He's absolutely over the moon about us, and know that when we sin, we have an advocate through the Son, Jesus Christ, and knowing that God is for us and who can be against us, then we can't be guilty about that, can we?
Very cool. Thank you, Richard. Anybody else want to share some other thoughts from other tables? Okay, please. Thank you.
I don't think I can top what Richard said. That was really good. We thought about remembering our baptism. a wonderful, joy-filled time. Weddings, joy at weddings, at births. Peter has just become or is it another great uncle, was it? Which is now a grunkle, so we can rejoice in grunkles. And in particular, we shared a joy on New Year's Eve at Carl's place with Bruce, watching Trinity and You, and having just a wonderful, joy-filled, guilt-free time together. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Kay. Thanks for that. Okay, our next question, which kind of follows up on this first one, is how can we focus on celebrating our lavish blessings more and more as Christians? So in 2020, how can we focus on celebrating more and more without guilt the blessings that God has given to us? Talk about that at the tables, and we'll have some more discussion and sharing afterwards. Going on out there by the sounds of it. Can we have a couple of volunteers to share with us all what your table discussed regarding this somewhat complex and badly written question? Peter.
We've got a very small table, so it's not very deep or very long. But I got the feeling that the first thing that we did in celebration and joy was the first miracle of Christ, and it was turning water into wine. And the interesting thing about alcohol is that, and I don't want to let any secrets out of the bag, but I do remember that some young Australian men have a propensity to look on alcohol one way, but what Christ did was turn water into wine, and alcohol has the effect of making you feel good, but it was in the setting of celebration and helping a young couple start out in life. So it was not just the booze up where everyone gets legless. It was a celebration, and it was that relational aspect of celebrating and sharing that was important.
Lovely, very insightful, very insightful. You got a comment, do you say? Yeah? Awesome, cool, come on up.
Hi everyone. So when we were talking about it at our kids' table, we were coloring as well. We talked about the fact that, first of all, we often don't see first of all, we need to see the blessings in order to celebrate them. And we sometimes just need to train our brain or ask Him who lives in us to help us do that. Like Stephen said, sometimes you can be having a perfectly nice week and everything's going well, and then you just have one thing that happened to you on Saturday, and then you've had a bad week. So that's what we talked about, focusing on the positive and focusing on the blessings.
Beautiful, thank you very much. And our last one for today is, let me turn you on. What does it mean to say that the nucleus of the universe is joy? The nucleus of the universe is joy. What does that mean to you? Let's discuss this around our tables for a few moments. The center, the very core.